same house, and because we wouldn't get out. See, everybody that didn't want to become Polish citizens had to leave their home. And my dad was stubborn. He really didn't want to leave that home. And so one day the police came, and Dad wasn't home, so they arrested Aunt Rosa and Grandma. They put them in jail. Now, I do not know for how long. It must not have been too long. I think it was a scare tactic. Well, then the police and the government left us alone. And then in 1922, then it got serious. Then everybody had to leave, and my dad still wouldn't leave. And he said that he would not become a Polish citizen, and he didn't want his children to become Polish. And then, of course, then one night, after we were already all in bed, but then my mother's friend came and told us that the police was going to get my dad the next day. But then also, at that time, the stubborn Germans that didn't leave, they executed him. They killed him. Nobody knew nothing. And so my dad knew that it was either that or be killed or get a long prison sentence or whatever. And then that's when we had to flee. Now see, I never knew the exact why we had to do that. Well then, on the side of our home was a road, and that road, now the road was like this, that led to the right, and about a half a mile down the road was the border. And that border connected our land between Germany and Poland. And of course, that's when we had to cross the road and get into Germany. And there too, it was scary like heck, because they were watching our property. And boy, I tell you, as I remember, Dad gathered us up and he said, nobody cries, nobody talks, and we had to be as quiet as we could. And then see, Uncle Eddie and Aunt Rosa already were in Germany. So they left Aunt Frida and Elvin and I and Margaret and Ernie. And then my mother took Ernie. They went over first. Yeah, he was not even that. Yeah, something like that. And I tell you, and then the police, as I remember, would go back and forth on horses. And then whenever we thought that the coast was clear, well then we had to run. And see, the border was just like a little road, like a little dirt road. And once we were across the border on German land, they couldn't touch us. They couldn't even shoot us.
How old were you at that time?
I was 8 years old. You know, and I remember that Elvin said,
I would think that would be something that would stick in there.
Yes.
My mother can't remember what she was in.
well, she wasn't that, she was a little over 6 at that time.
She just says she remembers clutching something, you know, when she told me.
That's
Oh,
right.
that is what she told me. She said it was what? She's got that mixed up with the coffee. She thinks she
No. No, it was my mother's friend. My mother said, before her friend left, she says, take whatever you want to take out of the house. Well, the coffee grinder was always standing on the table, so she grabbed it. And while she ran through the woods, she lost that little drawer. Well, you know, the next day the police found that drawer. And they knew exactly who warned our parents. And did you know, in 1957, when Margaret and I went to Germany, we met some people that had lived at that time still, you know, in Germany. I mean, where we lived. And she said that the police took that woman and almost killed her because she came and warned our parents. See, there was such hate between the Germans and the Polish people at that time. It's just like the hate that's in Bosnia now. But do you know the German people that became Polish citizens, if they thought that they were good off, they sure were mistaken, because they prospered. And the German people that were Polish citizens, they built new houses, they built new barns, they had everything. But then when World War II came along, and Germany lost the war again, can you imagine what the Polish did to the German people? They were old already, and Ernie Newman's family was one of them, and they had to escape with their life, because those Polish people had such hate for the Germans that a lot of them they murdered, they killed them, and my mother's cousin, they tied him on the back of a horse and dragged him until he was dead. That's what they did. And it wasn't until the Russians occupied Poland that massacre and that murder had to stop on the German people. And the Russians said the next German that gets killed by a Pole, they would pay for their life. Now, I didn't know this until maybe 10 years ago, and I actually met a lot of them people in Chicago. See, Ernie's nephew was here, and then his sister came, and we met the actual people that it happened to. Now, see, the German people weren't better off, the ones that stayed in Poland at that time. And Ernie's people either. They had to flee for their life, and they were old at that time already.
How old was Ernie?
Ernie was, I think, in his late 20s. Well, I better started.
She's getting very, very emotional.
And we started, well, 9.5 years old. We were on the boat Thanksgiving Day.
Always.
I have that big old basket. Everybody's stuff on
Did you?
old basket.
Oh, golly, prize back.
I know.
Where'd you get that?
You always have them. I always have it.
I know there was about 2 or 3 of them that we had.
My mom always had it. Full of stuff. Mom's got it.
Oh, now see, it was winter and the weather was cold.
North Atlantic.
And we landed in Muscatine about the 5th of December.
Did you come to Ellis Island?
Yes, and we had to stay there all night. And we had a little cubby hole.
How did you end up in Muscatine?
Well, oh, heaven says, I got the whole history of that too. See, my mother's, my dad's sister, they came to this country in 1907. But in 1903, Uncle, her husband, came over here to look for land like they had over there, the sandy land. So he went all down the Mississippi River, and he lived in Milwaukee for 2 years because there was all Germans there. And so he came to Muscatine, and when he saw the sandy land, he just knew that this was the place for them. So he came back, and this was in 1905. And then in 1907, him and his family came over here. And you know, half of Muscatine, the German people, all came from one place. And I bet you know most of them.
And were these the Sadanskis, is that?
Yeah, that was Uncle Zadansky and Tante. And you probably knew the Bradys, like Carl Brady. Well, the young one now, that would be his grandfather. They all went to school with my mother and dad over there. There must have been 50 families that migrated here between 1970. Oh, and then my aunt and uncle, they brought a lot of boys with them, like the Schrader boys, because you see, then they worked and earned enough money to send for their parents to come. And that's how they did it. There was the Schusters, the Bradys, and the Getzes, the Nicholsons, and the Brills, yeah, the Brills, and the Claybees.
Roger Sedowski.
Yeah, well, that was his dad. His dad is the one that came over here.
I
Yeah,
remember going out to Sedowski's.
farm.
Uncle and uncle.
Mhm. You know, and I think actually, before Dad built that house, we were gonna come also. And so, but I don't know what happened. I guess that place where, see, the old house burned down in 1910.